Okay, results on a Rampage for Tuesday night, November 11th, 2014, 11/4/14. It is voting day. If you haven't voted, you should have, if probably too late in the East Coast. All right, so great. We're going to talk tonight about legacy. So the first thing I want to talk about is celebrate one of the members of our coaching group who I invited, but she's not here. She's at an event, actually. She did her first webinar the other day and made money. Did a webinar broadcasting to X number of people and sold a few products. So that is the hallmark of turning pro. One of the interesting things about results is the distance between, if this here is the distance between $0 and $1 million, your first dollar is about here. So the first dollar that you make online requires a great effort. After you get your first buck making online, creating your first webinar that converts, people actually pull out their card, somebody that you don't know and pays you for something, then you have discovered the secret to getting money and to creating something that people pay for, and you scale it up. You might tweak it, she's going to tweak it and change some things and make it better, but the answer is she sold a few, and so I made a few $1,000s, and so that was extraordinary and exciting, and so I'm congratulating her on this just because, so that if she sees it later, she'll congratulate her. That's my dog barking in the background. It sounds awful and vicious, but it's actually a Beagle Basset mix, so it's about a foot tall and has a very deep, throaty bark. Okay, today we're going to talk about legacy and results. Results are what we intentionally create. Okay, there's 3 points we're going to talk about today, and the name of the Hangout was, what was it? What is a legacy? Who can leave a legacy? What is your legacy? And how to get started and add daily. So legacy is used a whole bunch of different ways. Legacy is just what you leave behind, right? You can leave a legacy of misery and pain. You can leave a legacy of poverty and debt. You can leave a legacy of nothing, kind of break even when you die. Like the gambler, he broke even, right? Or you can leave a legacy of wealth. You can leave a legacy of intelligence and addition to society. You can leave a legacy of healthy and happy adjusted kids that integrate well in society. And you can leave a legacy at a university and at church, in your neighborhood. There's all kinds of ways to do that. But none of that leaving of legacy happens accidentally. Okay, now someone can come up with some notable exceptions, and I'm not going to even argue that, but for 99% of the time, legacy is something you do on purpose. It is the culmination usually of a considerable amount of work, perhaps a lifetime of work aimed at a particular outcome. So results are like the short-term version of a longer version, which is legacy. So people make donations to charitable institutions, and they leave themselves a legacy being known for being philanthropists or being supporters of particular causes. Alma maters of particular universities do that. They make a lot of money, and then they get buildings named after them and so forth. That's sort of the big scale, and we know about that. I'm going to scale this way down to talk to the individuals that are here tonight on this call and the ones that might watch this later. So I'm not going to talk about donating $50 million to Ebola research as Bill Gates just did, however beautiful that is and wonderful in terms of philanthropy and doing that sort of thing. That's fantastic. What I'm talking about is you and me. The first question I have is, okay, who can leave a legacy? And we're going to sort of shrink this down to just us here. And my answer, if you haven't figured this out by now, is you can. You can leave a legacy. You can leave a body of knowledge, of work, a pile of money, a feeling, a set of memories, some things that are treasured after the fact by those who knew you, who loved you, who worked with you, and so forth. So you can leave a legacy. And so sometimes people think that's only for the rich or the famous or the lucky or the strong. It's not. Anyone can leave a legacy, but it takes some intentional work. Now, those that leave a bad legacy, we're not considering those. They maybe get it unintentionally by doing all kinds of crazy things. So we'll just set that aside, and we'll just talk about a legacy that you or I might leave intentionally. Okay, so the first thing to think about is, do you want to? Do you want to live your life and sort of, I keep bashing in my microphone here, back up, too close anyway. Do you want to leave a legacy? Or do you want to just sort of live and slide into the, afterlife or the grave or, whatever that is, unheralded? So I'm assuming that away too. This hangout and this conversation is for those that want to do more than that want to create something valuable to leave behind, whether it's a body of knowledge, a body of work, charitable work, money, information, the way you raised your kids, the grandkids, the memory, the family memories, something, okay? And it isn't really that hard to do, okay? What it requires is it requires three things. It requires an intention. You want to do that. It requires a focus, because there's always going to be choices. So let me just talk about one that's easy to understand. A family legacy. So if you intentionally create certain memories, let's say around holidays, Christmas and Thanksgiving in the U.S. are coming up, and in many of the parts of the world, it's Thanksgiving in the U.S. and another day in Canada and so forth. But let's say you have some traditions around holidays, and whatever they are. As Christmas, everybody doesn't celebrate that, but that some holiday you have a tradition, and that tradition goes on so many years, and the activities are so pleasurable and memorable that it creates the tradition may not be the legacy, but the feeling of unity that happened. Okay, if you have certain traditions around holidays. Now, I was raised with a tradition of Christmas, and so my dad would read us certain stories, and that created it created a situation where we were together. We had a fireplace. We didn't live in a cold place, so we didn't use it, all that much. But in the dead of winter, why, it was fun, and it was fine, and it was cold enough outside that we enjoyed the fire. So we would build a fire in the fireplace, and we lived in a very modest, small tract home and so forth, but it was at a fireplace, and we had those experiences regularly, so that it created the situation that my memories of his voice and reading the stories and so forth is a legacy. It is one of the things that taught me about acting. It taught me how to read. It taught me to be expressive. It gave me a gift that I have since passed on to my kids, because I have established similar traditions with my own flavor. And, the result is they're grown up and gone, and they say we can't imagine this or that holiday without, some particular activity. So that's an easy one. It's close to the heart, and it feels like, family and love and so forth. But it's easy to understand how a repeated tradition can create a memory that becomes a legacy of love or of kindness that you leave behind. So let's talk about this in business sense. One of the easiest things to think about is money. Okay, you leave a legacy, a big pile of money that people can use. Money itself, quite frankly, isn't much of a legacy. Now, some people may disagree with that, and I'll take comments in just a minute here, and you can throw rocks. But money itself can be used for anything, and so the pile of money isn't the legacy. The legacy might be the ethic of hard work, or the ethic of dedication that allowed someone to create the pile of money, or that allowed someone to have a business that lasted for many years, or that had a reputation for honesty, integrity, dealing fairly with customers, handling problems, or doing some of those kinds of things. So the stuff itself is not the legacy as much as, the material things, the building, the money is not the legacy. The legacy is the reputation and the feeling around that. Okay, and that's what I'm going to propose here, both for the business sense and also for the family sense. So the first question is, who can leave a legacy? My answer to you is, you can, if you want to. Now, let me stop right here for a minute and see if anybody has examples or ideas you want to throw into the discussion at this point. Anybody? Okay, hearing none, we'll just move on. The next question here is, what is your legacy? So I said a minute ago, the first thing to think about is, do you want to? Do you want to create something that is memorable and valuable? Memorable and valuable in a larger sense. Legacy is kind of a big word that feels like it's kind of big. You know, 50 cents in a piggy bank isn't 50 cents in a piggy bank isn't a legacy. It's a popsicle. So you have to decide if you want to. Do you want to leave a legacy? And if you do, what is it about you or what you do that you want to be remembered for? Or more importantly than you want to be remembered for, in the sense of a selfish desire to be remembered, that you find important to pass on to business associates, to clients, to kids, to grandkids. What is it that you find important? So for my parents really created the I mean, I had all kinds of issues growing up, and many of you know about those. But one thing that was absolutely apparent and that rubbed off on all of us kids very strongly was hard work. We had to do, you know, a lot of chores around the house. In the summers, we went up to the farm and we worked during the summer. And so we learned the dignity of work. We learned not to be afraid of hard work, even manual work, scrubbing floors, scrubbing toilets, mending fence, hauling hay, physical labor, hard work, get in, get your hands dirty, get it done. I remember over and over again my dad, you know, under the car fixing things, and, you know, they're kind of too complicated now, but in those days you could change out your starter and your alternator and the spark plugs and the wires and the water pump and this and that and the other. And I remember all those things taking place in the grease on the under the car on the floor of the garage. And so a legacy for me from him would be a willingness and ability to do hard work and to create things that create outcomes from the result of your hard work. I remember him building things, replacing toilets and floorboards in the house. So that kind of thing is a legacy that I got of hard work from him that for me has been a real positive thing in my life, and I've intentionally passed that on. Another legacy that I have intentionally created for my kids is that of intellectual pursuits. Study, knowledge, learn things. Don't be afraid of learning. Don't be afraid of picking up something you don't know, studying it, going after it. There's nothing to be afraid of there. Knowledge is available. Knowledge is something you can pick up. This is really important for you today listening as you think about businesses, because the internet, the tools, the speed, the access is changing almost as fast as we can imagine. So Google does updates every few months. I just saw Panda update number 3. They refreshed that and changed all the rankings again, retested all of the links to all the websites, and the spammy links that were gotten rid of by Panda were retested, and, you know, sites got reordered. I think it was just a few days ago. So those kinds of I dropped something, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Those kinds of issues are regular, and understanding and creating the knowledge around those is really important. The tools and tips and techniques that we have for creating video, which is what, you know, we're doing with these Hangouts, change all the time, and staying up with that is really valuable. So now let's talk about legacy for your customers, okay? I want you to think right now, and I'm going to give you a minute to do it. What is the legacy that you want to create? Now, I don't really care if you think about family. You know, you might establish a scholarship trust fund. That's actually funny, because when my brother was going to law school, I was older than him, and so I already was out working, and so I created a tradition in our family of helping the younger kids going to school. I donated some money every month to help him with his monthly expenses, and I just did it. I gave it to him for several months going to school. And then, you know, because I did that, when he got out and he made good money being an attorney and a tax attorney and doing different things, you know, he did the same thing. And so you know, that was just a little thing that I created because I thought it was a good idea and I knew he needed it, and I wasn't thinking about long term at the time, but it turned into that. So those kinds of things are things to think about. What is your legacy? What do you want to be remembered for, not accidentally? So I'm going to put all of you on the spot, if you're willing to play here, and just ask you for a minute. Now that I've talked about this for a minute, it really ties into the result you want in your life. If you had to pick maybe one or two things that you want to be remembered for, what would they be?
I could do this one.
Roll, buddy.
I think that the thing that I would want to be remembered for among my friends and the clients that I help is that I help them not be a prisoner to their own success, because the vast majority of my clients are making, you know, 300,000-400,000 a year and miserable, and they feel as if they got robbed after all these years of hard work, going to all these Ivy League schools and hundreds of thousands in loans. Now here they are, miserable, X number divorce, trapped in a hospital, trapped in a law firm. And I think if I can be the person that help them get their lives back, get back time with their families, and not lose the quality of life that they dreamed of having, then that would be good for me. I'd take it.
So thank you. That's good. I want to ask you another question. In terms of legacy, so that would be a reputation or a memory that people have of you, of having them not be victims to their own success or their own ambition, meaning having thought, I want to do all this work so I can maybe just make a lot of money, but probably also do good, to help people as a doctor or an attorney or whatever. Had you thought about that in terms of legacy before, or just what you were doing as a business?
I don't think I had thought of it in terms of legacy before, because I think what I realized is I knew that the demand and the business model was there, and I knew that I would be helping myself continue to stay free from being trapped in an ER. But one thing that I know that I've noticed increasingly is that the people that I work with, when they tell me what they're getting out of it, they're actually propagating to their next generation, to their families as well, to their kids who are modeling them that you don't have to be trapped within a cubicle, within a hospital, within a firm. And so I think that my work is propagating through that as well. And I hadn't thought about it like that until you said it. But
okay, thank you. That's a great answer, a great thought. I realize when I made this topic and I wrote it down, this is a little esoteric in terms of long term. It's not something you do in a month or a year, or maybe even 5 or 10 years. It's the accumulation of an intentional dedication over a period of time. You know, a person as a doctor who chooses to stay as a doctor and does a long period of practice and makes perhaps some discoveries or some interesting contributions, leaves a legacy in the medical field per se. The legacy that you're talking about is way beyond, in my feeling, as you've described it to me, the feeling that came up for me is it's way beyond just helping them not being trapped in a cubicle or in a firm or in a situation that's miserable, but it teaches the concept that you own your destiny, and that regardless of your training or your initial direction, that you actually have some control. And as we move into times that are even less certain and more fluid, as technology and society changes even faster, that the idea that you own your destiny, that you have some control and you need to take action, is sort of the real power behind what you've described. And I think that's what you said when you were talking about propagating it through to younger generations. Did I hear you right on that?
Yep, you did.
Okay, cool. So, Rick, or Awita's popping in and out. She wants to be in here 2 or 3 times.
Hello.
Are you here?
I'm here. Are you talking to me?
I am talking to you. So did you have a thought about legacy that you want to create?
Well, I actually like what Manny had to say, actually. 'Cause I never thought about it like that either. The fact that me doing what I like to do, helping other people, is creating a legacy, not just doing something for me, but for my clients or patients or whoever my potential clientele would be.
Well, that's one of the reasons I put this out here today for a topic. It's hard to think about when you're starting a business and you got the grind of doing your work and starting the business and everything else. To think about legacy, that's this, yeah, okay, some people somewhere, whatever. But if you intentionally create powerful results for people over a period of time, they're going to remember you for that, and they're going to look to you. And if you operate, as I know you guys intend to and do, in integrity and with the desire and the success of the client as a high goal that you keep in mind all the time, that is the stuff of which legacy is made. The reason I wanted to raise it is because it isn't that hard to do. And in my opinion, at least, it's getting easier to do because the bar is going down and the nature of the bar is changing. We recognize people for their stupidity, and we recognize people for their embarrassing behavior, and we recognize people for their notoriety in a negative way as opposed to their positive contributions. And so if you want to create something positive, you have that option and you have that opportunity in a way today that's never existed before. Rick, I wasn't leaving you out. What do you have to think about that? What legacy do you want to create?
One of creating change in other people's lives, and as I've been thinking about this and in the coaching time I've spent with you, I'm starting to think back and recognize things that I've already done in the business that I used to own, where there's a couple who are just dear friends who both divorced and then got together, kind of like a Brady Bunch, and they owe that relationship 100% to me because I brought them together. There's no possibility they would have met otherwise, and it's a delightful story in its own right. And from that business, a very, very close friend who worked for me for many years, who died in his 30s, unfortunately, sadly, left 2 young children behind at that time who are now in their 20s, and I did my best to step in and keep their father's memory alive because he was a very, very close friend. And so these are things that I did in the 20 years I owned that company that, the work that I did was technical work, and nobody remembers any of that anymore. That's long gone. But the effect that I had on these people's lives is lasting, and I need to remember to take the time to notice the way I've changed, the ways in which I've changed people's lives for the better, and continue to do that. So thank you for bringing it up.
You bet. So let's talk a little bit more about intention. I don't know if Joy's on here now. Joy, are you on? Would you like to talk about legacy you'd like to create?
Just for a moment. It's funny. Like I haven't really thought about it actually at all. Well, I should say that maybe a little bit. But one thing that's interesting is that my dad created a amazing legacy. He was a famous archaeologist, and so left. People still today talk about him. On eBay, I'll sell some artifact, and the guy will go to the site and talk to the owner who knew my dad. It's just really interesting. So I sort of have a little bit of somewhat riding on his coattails because I'm also in. This dog is driving me nuts. Popcorn. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm looking for a way maybe to combine like what my dad's work was and his legacy and build on that. Because I have a natural love of antiques. I have a natural love of fur trade and, prehistoric artifacts and all that, working at the Heard Museum, all this kind of stuff. So, and creating, like a coffee table book on things. So, I think that's one way that I'm going to, one part of it anyway. So, I've been thinking about that actually for quite a while. So, finding ways to do that. And I think I'm going to go deal with this dog. She's making all sorts of funny noises. I better go take her out. Oh, okay, so that's it.
All right, well, thanks. So I intentionally did this. And, I didn't expect anybody to come prepared. There was no way you could have. Didn't know what I was going to do. But legacy is not something that happens accidentally, okay? If you don't think about the kind of legacy you want to leave with your kids, with your business partners, with your clients, and with the people around you, you'll create something unintentional. If you have guiding principles, if you have guiding intentions, minimum standards that you hold yourself to, whether it's performance in your family, whether it's performance with clients, that you hold yourself to because it's who you are, then you're on a road to creating the kind of legacy that you want. So the last point I had down here is how to get started and add daily. So this isn't a contest. It isn't an issue of trying to be bigger or more important than, pick somebody, the Joneses or Warren Buffett or Bill Gates or anybody. The answer is who cares? The real question is, do you act in integrity with who you are? And do you have an intention and know what it is over time to create a body of behavior, a body of influence, a body of work, a body of client service that does what you came to do in a creditable way? So I don't know if I've explained that very well, but each of you, I know the people that are on here, the business that you're in, Manny's, with yours, your ability to give people options and to let them see an opportunity to create a life where they do the good they want to do, but do it in a way that leaves them the opportunity to live a holistic life. And Weeda's idea about health and about using the exercise and running therapeutic benefits to create a healthy lifestyle that's more enjoyable for more years. It has another benefit of, lowering healthcare costs and a whole bunch of other things too. But and Rick, with the kinds of changes that you've been talking about in terms of helping people manage change and create change in their lives, and Joy preserving her father's legacy. Some of the things you guys all know that my goal in life is to help people maximize their gifts and talents. And my greatest joy is to see people succeed. And so my commitment to all my clients, including all you guys, is to do whatever I can do so that you can maximize your gifts and talents in a way consistent with your values and help you in that creation. And my ability to do that and succeeding at that is the legacy that I want to create, being known as a person who pushed, helped, kicked, pulled, facilitated great success on the part of those that I had the opportunity to work with. So getting started and adding daily isn't complicated. It's as simple as knowing where you're going and taking a step in that direction every day. And it is not like you're building a monument and you put 1 inch on the monument every day. It's making decisions and actions that are consistent with your core values, your core value alignment, expressing who you truly are, refusing to live in a role that is lower than your value, and I don't mean money-wise, I'm talking about who you are and what you stand for. And we assign so much of our worth with monetary compensation, but that's only one small measure, and its extraordinary importance makes it sometimes easy to lose perspective. But you can be rich and be a jerk, and you can be poor and be a hero. And nobody would argue with that, because we all know examples of those kinds of people whose value and worth and meaning to us transcend, in fact, are not even related to the monetary value that were arbitrarily placed on them. So creating intentionally that being, that legacy that you want to, was the topic that I just wanted to talk about tonight, because as we strive to build our businesses, make more money, make a bigger splash, get top positioning, and help people, doing it in a way that is consistent with our core values and leaves us smiling and feeling happy and contented, like we did the right things for the right reasons, for me is the core meaning of life. And if I got to the end and had $1 billion and I hated myself, it wouldn't be a lot of fun. So I'm going to open it up to any more comments, questions, and tomatoes at this time.
I'll ask you a question. Harkening back to your days at Cal ISO, which I like to refer to, I'm sure that when you were changing the landscape of electricity in California and in Toronto, that you weren't thinking about a legacy. You were simply doing what you felt called to do and capable of doing, recognizing that it was going to have a lasting effect. You didn't get hung up on it.
Yeah, all true. The one in Canada was in Alberta, actually, not in Ontario, but that's okay. So here was my guiding principle then. My guiding principle then, and it's the reason that I made friends and I made enemies, was, can we build something that will stand the test of time, that will work? Can we build an electricity market that is not so tilted toward the Enrons and the people that currently have market power that it will stand, it will work and it will not explode? And in Alberta, when I went up there to help them change things, it was the same question. I don't care who hates me. Can we make something here that will work for everybody? Because that was certainly the intent when somebody concocted the idea of deregulating electricity, is somehow it was going to, give benefits to the consumer and still allow fair and good returns to those who were taking financial risks in building power plants. So my guiding principle was always, can we make this thing work and work well? And I actually never thought at that time about legacy per se. It has been brought to mind recently as I went back up to Calgary to speak at that thing, and I was told, well, everybody considers you the principal architect of this whole thing, and I actually had never thought about it in those words. And I guess it's true, but my guiding principle was, can we build something that works for all the players? So that's what I thought about in both places.
And that, I think, part of the reason I brought that up, knowing that you would say something like what you said, is to help frame the whole concept of legacy from the way you see it. So thank you for that follow-up comment.
You bet, absolutely. Okay, Manny or Weeded, you got something you want to add? I see shaking of heads, and Weed is not unmuting, so I guess we're done. I hope you enjoyed this hangout tonight. This is a little esoteric. I realize that. It doesn't have directly to do with some tactic or strategy to create massive results today. But my goal, my thought is, if we don't think about the long term, we end up with a bunch of serial short-term decisions that lead to an unspecified destination. If we keep our star on the horizon bright and strong, and we tie our anchor to it, then at least we can make incremental movements in that direction. Make sense?
Yep.
Thank you all for coming. I appreciate you. And I'm going to shut her down right now.